Last Pint Productions presents The New Way with Ben and Matt. The New Way contains adult content such as scotch, beer, erections, and John McClane. Viewer discretion is advised.
I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it.
It's very simple. If you stop going to bad movies, they'll stop making bad movies.
Uh-oh, the jig is up.
Because it's a brilliant film. It's so funny and violent, and the soundtrack kicks fucking ass.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
And welcome once again to The New Way with Ben and Matt. I am Matt.
Were you about to say I am
I had a joke in my head. Ben walked into my place and immediately asked if he could take off his shoes. So I was going to call him Shoeless Ben Wilson, which was hysterical in my head. And I've been sitting on that for like a good 30 minutes, and I was so excited, I almost said, I am Shoeless Ben Wilson, but I fucked it up.
I told Matt, don't worry, I'm not going to pick my feet during this episode, so...
You would be able to hear it. This mic picks up everything. Just be this, like, constant, like, scratching sound.
Terrible. Audio issues.
Yes.
Anyways, thanks again for listening in to The New Way, done by Last Pint Productions. You can, of course, find us online. Our website is lastpintprod.com, short for productions. And you can pretty much go anywhere from there. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/lastpint. We are also on Twitter, at lastpintprod.
We keep you guessing by changing it up on everyone, so it's as hard to find us as it possibly could be.
I think that's the point. And of course, right now we're available on iTunes. You can look for The New Way. We're the first thing that pops up once again, and on BuzzFeed, and
we have a feed. But we're everywhere you could want us. If we are not somewhere that you like to tend to get your podcasts or your movie information, whatever, let us know. We will find a way to get on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We will permeate every single way, your life, every single way that we can.
We're very invasive.
Through every single venue.
We're like Homeland Security.
You're going to hop into your car and not even know that we're going to be on. You're just going to turn on your car.
Hey, what's up? It's Matt and Ben. We're here with The New Way. Which, by the way, I realized on our second podcast, which should have aired the week before you're listening to this one, that I think sometimes I say The New Wave podcast, and that's because I'm a child of the 90s and I fucking love new wave music, and I'm again.
You mean you're a child of the 80s?
I was somewhat childish during the 90s and most of the last decade.
You can't blame. You're not like Canadian or anything, where everything came 8 years later.
Listen. First of all, you know very well that I stopped my emotional and musical growth in 1997.
This is true.
When Soundgarden broke up, that was pretty much the end of my musical education.
This is true. I know this as a musician. Anyways, before we kind of get into this week's subject, which is critics, which we'll discuss verbatim, I want to turn the microphone over to Matt for a second, just because I think that he has some ranting to do. I don't know what's coming, because I have no idea what's going to be happening here. He's been in a bad mood all day. I know that because we walked into his apartment and the first thing he did was pour himself a giant glass of scotch.
And I haven't had a drink in quite some time, because that's part of why I'm pissed off. All right, so Ben knows that I tend...
Hold on one second.
I am ready to rant. I am there.
I know. Okay. Here, but if you hear just a clip, or if you hear that hysterical sound of that screaming goat that sounds like a human, or sounds like Mark Hoppus on a B-side of a Blink-182 album, then that means we cut this out.
Yeah,
so
this may fail. We'll put it on the outtakes, which you will be able to find on our website.
Okay, so anyways, I'm interested. Go.
All right, so first of all, I'm having a drink right now because I'm involved in a Biggest Loser contest at my office, which is a weight loss contest. And I kick ass at dieting. I mean, I put Richard Simmons to shame. Like, he just comes over here and is just like, oh my God. And so I can't drink beer, which is my favorite thing to drink. It is the nectar of the gods. And normally I would have this contest in the bag, but my little shithead manager, David, who did not like the first podcast, so he's going to get shit for that right now. David weighs in at like 43 pounds and is somehow like 1 percentage point behind me. So I'm on my last week now, and he got like he gets all the luck. He got an abscess in his tooth, and they had to pull the tooth out, so he hasn't been able to eat solid food in 2 weeks. He's like, he looks like an extra from The Walking Dead, and he's gonna fucking beat me, and I can't deal with this, and I can't have beer, so I'm having a scotch, which I know is a gateway alcohol to beer, but I'm going to make Ben promise not to give me any of the delicious Pabst Blue Ribbon that's sitting next to his bare feet. But that's not why I'm fucking amped up entirely right now. It's one of the main reasons. But as some of you know from listening to the first podcast, and Ben knows, I work in social media for our company, NativeRemedies.com. If you've got something wrong with you, we have something to fix it. Anyway, that's the end of that plug. Last night, I'm on our pet side, and we do herbal and homeopathic remedies. We have had an influx of people coming to our page. And this guy gets on there last night because his dog has got, like, advanced Cushing's disease. And someone else on there had talked about our product for Cushing's disease, and it did these amazing things. I'm back and forth with this guy for like 2 hours last night on my phone. I had to like interrupt trivia to go outside and like go back and forth. Because there's no greater feeling than when you're like talking back and forth on this social media platform. You actually help one of these people and they're forever indebted to this idea. So I'm back and forth. I'm feeling great. I get back to the house and it's like 45 minutes goes by and the guy writes back on our page. He's like, oh, I got home, and my dog didn't look like he was doing so well, so went to the vet, and he died. The fucking dog died. I know this sounds morbid. Everyone at my office actually started laughing at this point, because it literally, the guy's first inclination after, like, taking his dead dog to the vet was to get back on Facebook and talk to PetAlive.com about his dog. I didn't know what to say, and I'm such a fucking empath that I didn't sleep last night. That's why I'm so fucking amped up right now. I got about 4 hours of sleep because this guy's goddamn dog, it weighed on me all night. Like, it would be like if one of my friends, I don't know who this guy is or where he lives, but I'm now invested in his stupid life story, and it has ruined my day, and then I had a shitty day at work, and anyway, that's how a dead dog ruined my day, and it's probably going to get cut from the podcast.
I don't know, I kind of like it. I didn't realize that you were going to go on the
I was going to go dark. I got 4 hours. I woke up at 4:15, fucking practically crying over this guy's dog.
I didn't think that you were actually going to go dark on me. I just didn't realize that this whole thing was going to be because of a dead dog.
Because of fucking Facebook.
Because of Facebook and a dead dog.
Yes.
They always go hand in hand.
Just a dead dog rising. All right. Anyway, folks, I'm sorry to get off on the tangent.
No, it's not a problem. Come on. Everybody has a bad day. Don't you want to know how my day was?
Well, I saw you at my no. Frankly, I don't. Actually, Ben did have an incident at his work as well today, and showed up at my office where he was supposed to look professional, looking like he'd been through the ringer. So, Ben, tell me what's on your mind.
Oh, there's nothing on my mind.
There's nothing on your mind?
No, not really.
You don't have forces of positives and negatives weighing on you right now?
No.
Possibly you had to carry literally the weight.
The worst of my day is that I had to carry around some really heavy magnets for no particular reason. Well, I mean, for a particular reason, but no particularly sane reason.
Was it because other people with magnets were following you and the push, like,
Yes, exactly.
the poles were just pushing you away?
That's what was happening. No. But then I got all sweaty, and this is like the one day, like, I'm one of those guys, I look nice when I go to work. I wear, a
Yes,
polo
you
or
do.
whatever. Yeah. I got a little bit better dressed up today because I knew I was going to have to meet the CEO of Native Remedies, and then I sweat more than I have ever probably a day at work in my life. Anyways, no big deal. Yeah, other than that...
Yeah, we had worlds colliding today, Ben, at
Oh, yeah, I
my
bought a
place
house.
of work.
I bought a house.
Fucking A! You bury the lead?
Yes, exactly.
We're
I
what,
bought a
like,
house.
fucking 10 minutes into this thing?
Well, I went and entered in a contract on the house, and I saw $5,000 disappear from my bank account, so I'm assuming that means we're in the process of buying a house.
Should have bought you the beers.
That's true. I
Well,
didn't think
everyone,
about that.
we're going to give a round of applause to Ben.
Yay!
Ben is now a home owner, and what a great time to own a house.
Well, let's not count the chickens before they've hatched.
You just said you bought a house.
Yeah, I bought a house, but we have to wait until the keys are in our hand. We bought a house last year, too, and it didn't end up paying
I saw that movie, We Bought a Farm. You know what happens at the end? He buys a farm.
Actually, they buy a farm at the beginning of the movie, don't they?
I haven't seen the movie, Ben. I was just trying
No,
to
you're talking
make
about
it
we bought a zoo.
We bought a zoo. I was thinking about the dog. He bought the farm. The poor dog. I swear, when the guy said the thing about the dog, you know that scene in Three Kings with Nora Dunn where she sees like the bird out in the oil and she's like, it's just so goddamn depressing. And that's exactly how I felt. So bought the farm.
I'm sure we
Facebook.
totally audio clipped about
God.
15 times there in the
Bless
last
America.
half a minute. Anyways, this will move us, complete non sequitur, to the topic of this week's podcast.
Wait, we can't tie this into Bought the Farm,
Oh,
can we?
no, you can't. Absolutely. Unfortunately, a great member of our Critical Film Society died in this past week. Roger Ebert passed away at the age of 70. Bout of cancer, obviously. And, of course, it's been well talked about on the internet. And I'm sure you've seen people on Facebook or on CNN talking about Roger Ebert dying. And, for a lot of people, that's not a hugely significant occurrence. And as it is just one person, in the critical field of film, specifically, it is a pretty major impact on what Matt and I do, which is we try to critically disseminate films based off of our experiences and what we like and what we don't like. So really, Ebert is one of those who is credited with bringing it to the mainstream, and credited him and Gene Siskel, of course, with really making it one of those things that was it wasn't a cop-out of a career to become a film critic.
No, and they were never, like, even though they may be the only people that ever went, like, super mainstream, yet completely retained all the integrity. Like, you look at somebody like Gene Shalit, or, like, any of the ones that were on the morning shows were, like, caricatures. They would make these ridiculous, they were like weathermen. They were the weathermen of critiquing films. And Ebert and Siskel, first of all, Ebert wrote, like, even though he had a TV show and stuff, he would still write for the Chicago Sun-Times these just amazing essays on films. And it was like the vitriol of hatred for a movie, which, I think that's his book's title, is like, I hate this movie.
Yeah.
And or just like a love letter. And he would do things like, sometimes he'd write a poem, or he would, he would change it up constantly. And I don't think there aren't a lot of people that really made their review a work of art as much as he did, whether you agreed with it or not.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the fun things to kind of talk about. Obviously his stylistic approach to reviewing movies is something that very much infected the rest of his peers. Because even if you're talking about getting into modern day with your Armand Whites and people who are just relatively despised based off of their their critiques, It's basically doing this type of hyperbole that goes beyond hyperbole and brings it back to something that's actually tangible in the film. It's where you can either praise, effusively praise a film, or you can completely shoot it down, and you're doing it using the most descriptive language, but you're still bringing it to the merits or the lack of merit that a film may possess. So that being said, and you said something really interesting earlier that we were talking about, which you can actually explain really quickly.
Yeah.
Which was what Ebert said about his view on filmmaking as far as like the 4 out of 4 stars or whatever.
Absolutely, and that's listen. I grew up. I would watch at the movies every Saturday morning after the new movies came out on Friday night, and I'd wait. Like even movie. I remember Jurassic Park. I had already seen the movie, and I still got up in the morning because I wanted to see what Siskel and Ebert had to say about it. And one of the reasons why is that I never, Siskel and Ebert hated Billy Madison. And I was a, 16-year-old kid and knew I was absolutely going to love Billy Madison. Siskel and Ebert were going to hate it. And it's what Ebert did so well, and it's this quote that he has, and I'll give it to you here. He said, "When you ask a friend if Hellboy is any good, you're not asking if it's any good compared to Mystic River," which I hate that he uses that movie because I hate it, but you're asking if it's any good compared to The Punisher. And my answer would be, on a scale of 1 to 4, if Superman is 4, then Hellboy is 3, and Punisher is 2. In the same way, if American Beauty gets 4 stars, then the United States of Leland clocks in at about 2. And I thought that sums up exactly what a good reviewer does. The ones that I trust, and I definitely tied into the online reviews, which we'll get to, the ones I trust are the ones that tell me how they're coming to a movie, what their history is with that type of movie, and then they give their opinion. Because it gives me everything I need to know to say they may hate it, but they also loved Mystic River. So then I know exactly where I sit at that point and say, well, I didn't like Mystic River, so now I know that that's the kind of movie that they respond to, and maybe I might disagree with where they're going in the path of this review.
Well, here is actually, and I have had this conversation / argument with a lot of people based off of the way that I look at movies or that I would review a movie. I believe that a movie, same way that Ebert does, and Ebert said it very eloquently, is that you're essentially basing it not on just the genre of movie, but what the movie is trying to be. When you walk into a movie, I feel like the ultimate goal of any reviewer, but especially just as a normal viewer, somebody who's trying to enjoy the movie, what is this movie trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. Like, what are its goals? And then does it meet those goals? My favorite movie of all time is not high art. I mean, you could make the argument it's high art, but my favorite movie of all time is Ghostbusters. And the reason why it is Ghostbusters is because everything Ghostbusters sets out to do, the moments of hilarity, the moments of suspense, the moments, everything in creating this sort of, entire vision of a film, it does everything flawlessly. It makes no missteps. Mm-hmm. And it being this so just perfectly communicated vision of a film, that's the reason why I feel like it's my favorite movie, is because it does everything perfectly. Now, the thing is a movie like, what are you going to talk about? Like, American Beauty is not setting out to do the same thing as Meatballs. And so, it's like...
Damn well should.
Yeah, damn well should, exactly. I want to cry. I want a mashup of American Beauty and Meatballs.
American Balls.
American Balls starring...
I've seen this movie. It's not what you think. It's a totally misleading title. Ben is entirely correct. It's funny, when we were first kind of like getting to know each other and working on writing, we had that conversation. Everyone always has that, what's your favorite movie? And I was really surprised at Ben's choice of Ghostbusters. Not that I don't love it. It was just one of those, it's not like a normal, it's not what
it's not a film school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, yeah, and he said it, and he gave the reasons why. I mean, and he can go into the technical details of cinematography and stuff. And I'm the same. My favorite movie is The Princess Bride. And I come down to, part of why I laud that movie is, again, those same reasons. It sets out goals. It tells you everything you need to know in your opening wraparound of what kind of story you're about to get into. And it meets all of those, and it does it in a clever, kind of nodding to the camera way. And it's what I dig about it. Now we're going to kind of seg through here. So we talked about Roger Ebert, and and it really is sad to not be able to read his essays.
And the funny thing about Ebert also is I have always consistently disagreed with Roger Ebert. I mean, I really the thing is I never minded reading Roger Ebert, even when I was completely disagreeing with him, because I mean I would read some of his reviews and be like, this is obviously completely missing the point of the film. This is somebody who's obviously more educated on film criticism and film theory than I am. I mean, he has that experience. He has that pedigree. But I never didn't enjoy reading what he had to say about something.
And I was just looking over, we were talking kind of about this before, but, Ebert has these, every year picks his favorite movie. And it was always, all over the board, which is awesome. It would be so easy for someone in his position to just suck up to whatever the most popular movie. But, Ben mentioned the one, in 94 he picked Hoop Dreams, which he had Schindler's List the year before. So 94 would have been Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, and Pulp Fiction. Exactly. And he picks Hoop Dreams, which no one had Hoop Dreams. All everyone does is talk about how robbed Pulp Fiction was, or how robbed Shawshank was. And then I looked down a list, and it's probably why I identify a little bit. Ben respects it, but I really agreed. I didn't always agree with the reviews, but I look at this list and I see Being John Malkovich, Almost Famous, Minority Report. These are all movies that most other critics would never, they might not even make their top 10 or top 5. And I love seeing those in the first position. And it's really why I will absolutely miss reading more and more of what he does.
Yeah, he definitely went against the grain a lot more than other critics. But I mean, he also had the voice too. He had the popularity too.
Absolutely,
and for good reason. It's going to be a sad place, sad world, and he's going to be
definitely
sorely
missed for sure. We kind of thought in this sort of discussion of film criticism, we kind of walk you through our introductions to, kind of how we came to be interested in what others had to say about film, and also kind of talk about just the way it's evolved has really been the evolution of information about movies being given to the public, and how when that becomes more readily available, you have a lot more people speaking up and making voices for themselves based on what they feel about a movie, because now they're educated. They're not just going and watching a movie and talking about an experience in the theater. They know what they're looking at. And you kind of look at it, I mean, you start with pretty much newspapers were kind of your probably jumping off point. Maybe radio. I don't know, did they ever do reviews on radio?
Did. I mean, they did that back in the day. And a lot of time, and this is just based off of my limited knowledge of the medium, there was the time where a lot of the studio broadcasts of radio shows were basically in the pocket of, we're talking about in the 30s and 40s of Hollywood, and were essentially being produced by these same what would now be the equivalent of parent companies. So you would have these people, especially people who were well known in the public, whether they were movie stars, that sort of thing, who were still doing radio. Basically lauding films and coming up and talking stuff about films that were coming out. Almost, but in a way, this was before, you really had sort of the big media push that you do nowadays. So studios relied on this type of hype of these people saying, oh, well, this star says that this movie is good, or this personality says that this movie is good, and you have to go see it. And really, people had nothing else to go on. So there was... Ironically, it was very as vapid and as completely, bullshit oriented as the marketing of films are nowadays. They might have even been more like that, back when we didn't have access
nowadays,
to so much information.
a publication like Entertainment Weekly, anytime it talks about a movie that's being produced by Time Warner, it has to mention that it too is owned and paid for by Time Warner, and that's all a result of that. Eventually, people got smart enough to see the conflict of interest. But you've got radio and you've got newspaper, and then you had the TV boom, which really, it hit its peak with Siskel and Ebert, which we already kind of talked about. And during that same time, though, is when you started to get these publications, magazines for movie information like Cinescape and Fangoria and Entertainment Weekly. They were a little bit more on them.
Poor Cinescape, man. Cinescape was the most badass science fiction magazine in the 90s. It was so sweet. I fucking wept. I wept the day it went from a monthly to a bi-monthly. Yeah. I was so sad.
Well, what was it? It wasn't. It was Star. There was Starlog that predated. That predated Cinescape, right. I believe. Because I almost like told this to Ben earlier because it's such a weird thing, but. When I was maybe about 8 or 9 years old, I started rewatching the original Star Wars trilogy again, and I had it in my head. I had this this fact in my head that Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader because he fell in a lava pit, and I had no idea where this had come from. And I eventually, years later, I asked my brother, I'm like, what? Why do I? Because it was when they announced the prequels. And I said, well, everyone knows how he became Darth Vader. He fell in a volcano pit. And they were like, no, that's not it. And I found out it was from one of those magazines. They had a piece of concept artwork of Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker fighting over a volcano. And Anakin falls in and is pulled out and put back together as Darth Vader.
Wow.
That was
That's awesome.
Old school. Like nowadays, that would just be everyone would know about it because it's such instant information. But it was only geeks. It was my brother had this, instead of going out and chasing women, he had his magazine of Starlog at home. And then he, of course, was excited about it and told his 7-year younger brother about it, who was probably too young to even realize it. But I kept that fact in my head for so long.
That's awesome.
And that's what's so great and damning also about the internet is that you now have this wealth of information and you have commentary tracks. Even Roger Ebert did a commentary for a film he had nothing to do with. He just liked it so much for Dark City.
Right.
And it's
dude. Never mind.
We're about to get into it. We're going to save what Ben was about to say, I imagine, for another podcast.
I don't know, yeah. Potentially. Anyways.
If we're not shut off.
Yeah, exactly. If we aren't cut off by then. But here's one thing I actually have to add. Even predating sort of those magazines, as you had print, obviously, and there was that critical boom in the late 60s, early 70s, when film criticism became sort of this new art form,
like Kerouac,
and it was, and you had all of these essentially very educated people, whether they were journalists or whether they were people involved in academia, who, especially with that new wave of filmmaking that really sort of got kickstarted at the late 60s. I would say with The Graduate, with Mike Nichols, where you had all of this intense art film craze, and you were going through, a lot of the Jean-Luc Godard and all of these other films, the influx of the foreign film. And all of a sudden, the New York Times and the LA Times, all of these newspapers, all of a sudden had these full-time film critics. Who
because it was also kind of like that status symbol of there's this art film out there, and we have the one guy that cracked it. Like this, our reviewer, he got it, and he's going to explain it to you.
One of the reasons why I've always had a prolonged love for Woody Allen is Woody Allen's disdain for those people and for their critical eye is just hysterical, and it really does actually permeate a lot of his films. Obviously, there's the very obvious ones in sort of in Annie Hall, where he's talking with a film critic or whatever, and he's like, "You have no idea." He brings the actual filmmaker out. But even in films like Sleeper and in films like Manhattan. And even into his later work, even when you get to horrible movies like Hollywood Ending, they have some pretty poignant things to say about what critical thinking in film, how that's sort of made it's a necessary monster, but it's a monster nonetheless.
Yeah, well, and I had a huge debate with one of my college roommates, Howard Goldfarb. Howard and I. Howard was like my best movie buddy.
That's just like the greatest name ever.
Howard
Goldfarb.
Howard Goldfarb, who we called the Farb, and had this. He was always like, I don't understand why all these women think I'm from New York. I'm from Miami. and had this like really thick, inexplicable New York accent. And anyway, we get in this huge debate. We're both extremely loud, so our other roommates like just despise when we would get into these.
Dude, I can't imagine.
We just we're looking at the equalizer up here. I may have just broken the sound barrier. Howard and I got into this huge argument about critics, and he got upset because there was one of our friends was going to school to be an art critic, and he got so offended, and his assertion was that if you can't do it, you shouldn't be able to judge it. And what's funny is that he never seemed to have that where his argument would always fall apart was the fact that he liked movie reviews, and we would sit and read Ain't It Cool News and things like that. And he always still, he'd try to fight it, but for some reason, people are more responsive to someone who has really no experience in film, other than they just fucking love movies. They'll still listen to them because it's like accessible, I guess. It's kind of interesting.
No, that is pretty funny, actually. But anyway, so, I mean, we had that period in print where there was this... the trust of a nation, basically, or the trust of these respective, municipalities were, put in the hands of these people who essentially had everything and nothing to say about a film, depending on what it was that they liked or what it was that they didn't like. And the critical dissemination became sort of a convoluted art, I feel like, at that point, where it was either... some were looking at it from a too technical standpoint. Some were looking at it from a standpoint of, will this play well to the masses? Some were playing, will it sell tickets? And sometimes that was the judge of whether the movie was good or not. And one way to bring back sort of Gene and Siskel is that Ebert, and we're talking about in the late 70s, and Gene Siskel, were the first popular critics to really kind of take everything into account, I feel, that I've ever read. Now, obviously, I'm not that old. I wasn't there for all of that. But noting what film reviewing was like in the 70s, which I do know what it was like, I've read extensively. I've read a lot of reviews, and I've read a lot of stuff that was about that period of time. And I've also read Ebert's book. But... There was a combination of sort of this idea of popularism, film theory, concept.
They also hit with one of the main reasons that show worked is that it also wasn't just one person. So you got to tune in each week and you got to watch these guys battle it out. And sometimes the battles were fantastic. Obviously it was always this big thing a movie could tout that 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. Those were never the most entertaining reviews. Most entertaining reviews were where one of them was like, you are an ignorant slut and don't know what you're looking at. And I always loved that conceit of the show of these two guys from warring newspapers that, get off their day jobs. Because it's very much kind of what Ben and I do. Ben and I agree on a lot of shit, but when we disagree on stuff, it's pretty vehemently.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And we always try to sugarcoat it, I respect it, but inside we're just he's a fucking moron. I cannot believe I'm actually working with him in any capacity because he likes that movie. Something's really wrong in his head.
Is that the way you really feel about me?
I thought that was you felt that way about me.
You thought that was a mutual feeling there?
Hey, so I hate The Matrix. Sue me. Come on now.
I'm gonna cry. Anyways, yeah, so they definitely popularized that, but they also brought it into that new era, though I was speaking about earlier. So what's really funny though is when I was growing up, and this is in the early '90s, my parents had just speaking about film reviews in print. My parents, of course, had a subscription to the New York Times. So the Sunday Times was my favorite newspaper for 2 reasons. One, it had film reviews in it occasionally, and 2, it had the full page ads for everything that was coming out. The movie section was
I thought you were going to say the lingerie section, lingerie ads. I got really excited.
Come on, man.
No.
What do you take me as? My mom already ordered from Victoria's Secret.
What's so funny is watching that evolution, because that completely carried into how the internet split off. And one of my big introductions to kind of getting interested in filmmaking was a site called Ain't It Cool News. And I definitely lend more... I have a nostalgia for it that probably will never go away. Ben will casually read it, but there are 100 better sites out there for what I get.
I used to be a very, very consistent contributor on Any Cool News. I've written in when I've seen a film before it came out.
Yeah.
I was featured once as a reviewer.
There you go.
On there, and this is back in the 2003-2004 when I was still
That
in
was
film
for
school.
Corky Romano. Ben gave it 3 stars and said it was a roller coaster ride of fun.
No, but anyways, here's the funny thing, actually, and I'll tell you actually my introduction because, did somebody just tell you, or were you linked to Ain't It Cool, or did you just start reading it? Do you remember how you got there?
I believe Ain't It Cool was a combination of, I'm pretty sure it was all around the Phantom Menace. Ain't It Cool was one of, and it's kind of where I was getting to it, and Ben's going to go into his side, but essentially, we kind of just talked about where we were coming from with reviews. We've got Siskel and Ebert, who are not only popular, but actually still appeal to the kind of inner film geek on there.
Sure.
And then you've got the really arty people, and then you've got people like Gene Shalit that are just like the masses that they're going to do it. And that completely translated into the online medium. So you have a site like Ain't It Cool, which is kind of like that it's a little bit more geeky side of Siskel and Ebert, but then that branches off into where you have things like the Onion AV Club, which is kind of like an offshoot of what Elvis Mitchell and the Times were doing, but they're doing it for a new generation. Let's be the smart, sarcastic ones and really dive into these movies on an intellectual level. And then you have Rotten Tomatoes. And Rotten Tomatoes, and Ben will get into it, it always impresses me and probably frankly intimidates me about getting more involved in Rotten Tomatoes is that it really is made up of all of the best of all those things we just talked about from personal people who aren't trying to launch anything or get noticed or try to,
I wouldn't argue that for every single case.
Not everyone, not everyone, but listen, you have no other site creates the clicks that Rotten Tomatoes does, where you have friends
on
absolutely. Rotten Tomatoes. You have people that you will go and hang out with if you find yourselves in the same city.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that doesn't... Everyone else's talkback it's that Kevin Smith line. It's 2 ferrets trying to fuck in a burlap sack.
It's really funny that you mentioned Kevin Smith. Specifically, that's how I got to Rotten Tomatoes. But before I even get to that, my introduction, like I said, I was always very excited when I got the critical film side thing, in New York Times or whatever publication, Cinescape, like I said, I was crazy about. In the mid-90s, there was right when the internet started becoming a thing, there was this site called eCreations. It doesn't exist anymore. eCreations.com.
I still get my e-cards from them. My mom sends them out every Easter.
Wait, eCreations?
E-cards.
Oh,
it's bad.
Well, no.
I just totally...
whatever. That was a terrible joke.
Fine, just go.
Anyways,
move.
I think it was eCreations.com. I remember this. I think I remember this pretty well. Anyways, I remember I was just kind of surfing around on the internet in the early days of the internet, and I was looking for critical film review sites. And eCreations was this site built entirely on user reviews. It was every movie you could ever find. And they had it you could search for a function in 1995. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
You could search for a film and that film would pop up, and then there would be a user review. Now, it wasn't a user review like IMDb now, where it's you offer your thing and then everybody comments on it and everybody gets to rate it. If you were the first to review the film, your review was the one that stuck on this site. But here was the thing. The review had to be approved by the moderators of the site.
Nice.
So you had to literally write into them and give them your review, and because if it was something that
like
was
a passionate plea of why you
no, you didn't have to do that. You basically just had to do it and say, and as long as the critical review seemed worthy, then you would give it. So there are these great films on there where people made a very valid argument of why they should receive 1 star. And they ended up on there. It was amazing, because I would go through that and I'd be like, wow, I love this movie. This person makes a really good argument about why they don't like this movie. And so it was really fun. And I noticed, I first logged in and I was like, what's my favorite movie right now? Die Hard. So I go to Die Hard, and nobody had reviewed the Die Hard movies. So I was like, this is my chance to have my voice seen or heard or whatever. And so I wrote...
I give this film 3 stars from Mr. McClane.
Exactly right. I wrote in reviews for all 3 Die Hard movies and got an email from the moderator of the site saying, and this is me at 13 or 14 years old, and of course I pored over these. I was using every single extensive word in my vocabulary. I was trying to be just so professional. I'm sure if I read them now, they would read like a retarded 8-year-old person's book. Child's book.
I like
Anyways,
his wife beater. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was cracking on.
Who knows? I was a relatively smart kid, but I got an email from him, and it said, "Hey man, I didn't realize that nobody had reviewed the Die Hard movies. Good call. Your reviews are really well written. I hope that you keep contributing to the site." And at that point, I was hooked on film criticism. Not because I have to write it, not because I have to put it out there, but that it made me feel so warm. I just remember that feeling when I got that. It would be like right now if Harry Knowles wrote you back after you saw something, and it was like, dude, that was an awesome review.
It's like your superhero origin. Like you just gave us like the history,
Exactly.
like why Ben does what he does.
Exactly, but it was awesome.
And it was that day
It
I
was
knew
so
I would
much
make
fun.
a movie one day.
Well, right. And so now we can seg that to what the internet's like now.
Yeah, it's too and it's what everyone loves and hates about the internet. It's too much, and it's too much that you want at the same time, and you like that battle. And I'm the other side. Like I'm the voyeur when I get on the internet. I comment on something or I get involved in a talk back maybe once every 3 months. Like I just don't. And it's never on something I'm actually passionate about. It's like a day like today where I'm just in a pissy fucking mood. Like there's the only, I think, complete review I have on IMDb right now is for a movie called The Fourth Floor with Juliette Lewis, and it's some ridiculous movie that I saw when I was at UF on HBO at like 4 a.m. in the morning. And I left this review on it because it was same thing. You always dip your toe in the water for something that doesn't really have anything else there. And for me, I like to immerse myself, and it's kind of the problem. I'm sorry to like go on a very brief tangent, but one of the things that Ain't It Cool got on the map for, and it wasn't really what I was interested in, was they loved to discuss the experience, and it wasn't like what brought me to this movie, like what led up to this movie in a figurative sense, like I went to movies for blah blah blah. It was like my car broke down, and then I went and ordered Goobers, and then I sat in the seats, and it was too like they got into this whole idea of the storytelling, which was like it was their version of what Ebert and Siskel and some of these other reviewers had started to do, but they just went the complete reality television way of it. And for a while, it was entertaining. I think it was entertaining for everyone because you saw yourself in all of these situations.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And the problem is that they really haven't evolved like they should, like other outlets have. And it's probably like and I think that's kind of a reflection on me as a filmgoer as well, is that I kind of like, it's the same as my music taste. I like that comfort zone of going to Ain't It Cool and knowing that the news I'm about to read has probably been announced somewhere a month before.
And the talkbacks are going to be completely insane.
I'm going to make it through like 4 talkbacks and be like, these people are assholes. And it's like comfort food to me.
No, sure, I understand
But they still offer, like, and I miss Moriarty, who's now Drew McWeeny over on Hitflix, I think, who does fantastic reviews and work over there. He had to progress. But there are still guys on there like Quentin Capone, who I will read every one of their reviews. Oh, and Vern. I love it that he's named after the character from Stand By Me.
Right.
They're all named after movie characters. But there are people on there still that I will always trust because 9 times out of 10, they're going to a movie the same way that I do with my friends. The same way I go to a movie with Ben with excitement or I made up my mind beforehand one way or another, and it's amazing.
Which is the same thing that happens on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, I could give out there are these people on there, and the way that the awesome way that I was redirected to Rotten Tomatoes in my adult life was in 2005 or 2006. I saw somebody link somebody else on another site somewhere. I don't know where I was, was like, it's really awesome. Kevin Smith is having this argument. Literally the Kevin Smith is having an epic argument with this chick on this site. You gotta check this out. So I went there and I was like, this is fucking nutso. I mean, Kevin Smith was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down.
It's an actual dialogue.
I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna tell. Well, I'm basically. He's like, you can not like my movies, but I'm gonna refute anything that you say that's infactual. And he did that, and it just pissed this girl off. And of course, everybody else is on there like, Kevin, give me a job. You know, whatever. So anyways, I joined this community, and then, like I said, I have friends that I've developed through that. I only know them through Rotten Tomatoes, or I've had dialogues with them in other, senses in some cases. But
he's talking about sex.
No, I've had no sex with any Rotten Tomatoes.
Not even people. The men?
Not even the men.
Okay.
I know.
Picky.
Roach, I know that you're probably going to listen to this. I'm very sorry that we were never able to have sex. But if I'm ever in Kentucky, we'll hang out.
God bless you, Roach.
Anyways, no, but it was this very supportive, fun community where everybody has these disparaging remarks to make about certain movies, but they would typically make them in this very... in a way that reminded me of myself. It's saying, like, I'm looking at this movie critically. I understand why other people like it. And of course, you're going to have your douchebags online. Like, you always are. But the thing is once I was ingrained enough in the community, same way as you know who to listen to on Ain't It Cool, I was like, I know whose opinions I trust. So there is that point where you just kind of get through the bullshit, and then you get to the people who you really like, and then those are the people that you trust. And then you develop, like I said, I developed friendships with some of those people.
No, and we'll kind of cap this off, but you just made like the point of why there's a reason I'm not active on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's because, frankly, I'm frightened by how immersed I likely would get.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
Ben will give me...
And we're not even in the heyday of Rotten Tomatoes anymore.
No.
Back in 2008, 2009, Rotten Tomatoes was explosive.
No, it was explosive in the small stream. It's actually becoming... I'm hearing more and more people talk about
Rotten Tomatoes.
Fresh or not.
But here's what's also happened with Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes has gone mainstream because they started getting inundated with social media. They made those ties. So now they have their big Facebook thing. Meanwhile, the whole movement or the whole community that I joined, which is literally the general discussions community, the off-topic discussions community that's in the forums, has been slowly dying out. Although we have that core group of people that still remain. It's still a place I visit often. But they, even though they're becoming more popular in the culture,
they're like the two thumbs. It's the two sides. It really is
forum,
the Siskel and Ebert kind of thing.
The forums have been dying down. It's been a slow.
It's like pretty much with Siskel and Ebert, their viewership as far as reading their columns went down as they got more popular. Was it given 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert or 1 thumb up or whatever? And that's Ben comes to me, and I apologize. I think we're running a little over right now, which means
we'll tie it up.
By the way, if you hear me right now talk about this rant that got cut from here, this is just the only evidence that will probably ever exist because I think we're gonna lose it.
I think it's gonna be fun.
But the thing with Rotten Tomatoes, Ben comes to me once a week with like a question that they spent maybe an afternoon. He and his like good friends on Rotten Tomatoes. On movies, and it's something like what is the best voiceover use in a movie, or what is the best introduction of a character, like a first shot?
What are the best first lines of a movie?
Yeah, so Ben will ask me one of these that he spent like maybe an hour thinking about and 10 minutes writing about on the site, and then it kind of like went away. I sit and upset. Like Ben brings this to me, I get home like I'm a fucking squirrel with a nut. And I just sit there like, oh my god, there's like so many things. I start going through my collection. If I actually like actively got on Rotten Tomatoes, I'd become Howard Hughes. Like I would just be pissing in jars in my room and like typing to people with my long fingernails on a tablet and talking about like what's the... I don't even have a good one.
It is the way of the future.
It's the way of the future.
Way of the future.
All right, so I don't know if you prepared a question for me tonight.
I think we could probably skip that. Why don't we do that?
Oh, no. We're not going to skip that tonight.
Okay, well,
all right.
You do a question for me. Now, I have a question for you, but we can get to it.
Well, maybe this will force you to ask like a grown-up question.
How long are we at right now?
We're at 47 minutes.
We're fine.
We're a little over normal, so... And I know the time is just flying by for all of you there at home or in your car or wherever you're listening.
So here's the thing. If you ask me one question right now, next week I get to ask you one question and you don't get to ask me one.
No. You're going to ask me a question tonight. I don't care if it's good. You're just going to think on your feet and ask me something.
That's fine.
And there also are going to be some rules going ahead with these questions. Because I've gotten the shit end of the stick on the last 2 questions asked. And Ben has gotten to walk away because I was taking the high road. Now,
Okay.
I'm not... Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to necessarily take the low road. I may today make it a little fun. But I'm going to make a rule.
Okay.
You can ask me anything embarrassing, anything you want. But you can't be Kevin Smith and rely on potty humor for each of your questions
I
today.
wasn't planning on it.
I expect... Because your first 2... One, I can't even repeat them. I can't even go into them again.
It's fine.
but
Okay,
they're
let's
awful.
get into it. Let's get
All
into
right,
it then.
So
To
I'm
your
going to
question.
go the potty
To
route.
your question.
All right. So what is the most embarrassing erection you have ever gotten in your life?
The most embarrassing erection?
Yes.
Easily the first one I ever got.
That's... details, please.
Okay. First erection I ever got. I think I was 7 years old. And I had an erection or I was 6 years old. And I walked into my mom's bedroom and I said,
God.
Mom, something is wrong with me. And she said, oh no, you're going to be fine. And I was like, I can't pee unless I pee straight up. Or something along those lines.
It's an impressively powerful erection that was pointing...
I think
God built us that way. We'd all be pissing in
Well,
our faces.
I'm just saying, you asked me what the most embarrassing one was, and that is embarrassing, because I think back on that, like, A, I was that young, and B, the first thing I had to think about was, like, I mean, I'm, like, the only child. I don't go ask my older brother, like, what's happening here. I'm like, Mom!
What does every kid do when they get an erection? They go to Mom.
They go to Mom,
They go to
and they
Mom.
ask what's wrong with them. Yeah, anyways.
Or they go to brag. Like, Yeah.
The funny thing is, my mom has probably been around for all of the, the very embarrassing moments in my life, so she probably might not even remember that. She might have a better story.
Yeah, maybe
Not
she
about
has
my
like
erection.
no, maybe she has like a more embarrassing erection story. Like, oh no, that's not the most embarrassing time Ben got an erection. There was this amazing time in church. He played the organ with it. So, all
Yeah,
right.
I don't think that was going to be one. Okay, so anyways, I have a more film-related question for you.
Thank
actually.
God. I don't have to worry.
And so I kind of want this, but it is still personal,
All right, that's fine.
and it's a twofer.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten action, like not full-on action, in a movie theater? I just mean making out, doing whatever.
Have I ever in a movie theater? Yeah.
Okay, what was the hottest? And I want to know what movie. I don't know who it was with, or I don't know what you were doing, but what movie was it that you were getting down to the most?
It sort of makes sense, but it's so weird when I say it in my head. Oliver Stone's Alexander. With Colin Farrell
yeah.
and Angelina Jolie and Val Kilmer in between fatness. But there was a lot of, sexy old-time skin on the screen during that movie.
There was a giant elephant.
And she called me Hannibal.
In that case, it wasn't on screen. The giant elephant in the room was Matt.
Yeah. And at least Alexander made me look straighter. So that's really the most important thing going to a movie, is that when the guy's, sexuality is questionable on screen, it just makes you look that much more manly.
Absolutely.
Like, at least I'm not trying to sleep with a family member.
Well, on that note, we will call it a evening or a morning or a day or whatever it is.
Whenever you're listening
time
to this.
that
We
you're
hope that
listening
you
to
go,
this.
I kind of hope there are a lot of people going to bed with us. Like, just falling asleep to the dulcet tones of Matt and Ben.
Meanwhile, their favorite actress is Jennifer Tilly. Anyways, well, once again, you can, of course, visit us on Facebook, Last Pint. Of course, our website, lastpintprod.com. On Twitter, at that same Last Pint Prod.
And if you subscribe to us on iTunes, you'll get updated every Friday. You may even in the future get a surprise or bonus podcast in the middle of the week. We promise they will be short and exciting.
And
much like Sex with Ben.
And we're going to have some fun guests on soon. So anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't even diminish that. Because I think we actually have some very interesting people we're going to talk to on here. So if you hate us, you just can't believe you've listened to the third one of these, and you're ready to unsubscribe, just give us give us a couple more episodes, because we've got some people coming on here that are going to talk about totally different things than what we've been going over.
Absolutely. All right. Anyways, well, it's been fun, so we'll see you next week.
This has been the New Way Podcast, as Ben likes as I say it, with Ben and Matt.
Ben and Matt.
Ben and Matt.
Cheers.